Thanks, Brian. As Fred he said, this is CRL's. We've been in operation for over 60 years now. We're now in our 7th decade. So the center is probably the longest-lived cooperative collection development effort anywhere. We are, as Fred said, living through very difficult times. We're encountering CRL libraries are expected to provide scholars an expanding array of source materials at a time when resources available for building and managing collections are dwindling. The costs of digital resources and services, however, continue to increase relentlessly. Conversion of CRL collections we've been seeing the conversion of our traditional collections by a number of mass digitization projects and commercial projects. And the prices and the costs of maintaining these kinds of collections continue to grow and to continue to increase, whether we're licensing them from a vendor or whether we're maintaining them on our own servers, those kinds of things. So there's the considerable costs of acquiring and managing and providing access to digital resources is with us at the same time as that we still have the continuing costs of acquiring, managing, providing access to print resources, serial literature in particular being particularly burdensome. At the same time, there really is not much reliable data around on the content, cost, and performance of the digital resources and services that we're being asked to acquire and support. This is forcing us, I think, to make collection management decisions, major collection management decisions, major investment decisions on the basis of very little information, much of that information provided by the same people that are providing the services. It's a kind of a world of self-disclosed information. So we're seeing decreases in library operating budgets as well as library materials budgets due to the reduction of endowments and due to the erosion of tax bases for the state governments in the United States and the erosion of endowments in Canadian universities as well. In this 7th decade, I think it's a good thing to reflect on what we've been able to accomplish in the past. There is a legacy of achievement that CRL libraries can look back to and can look to at this time in our existence. CRL libraries collectively have created a historic investment in diverse shared collections. For CRL, we've accumulated, acquired, and preserved about 5 million volumes and volume equivalents in the course of the 60 years that we've been in operation. The 5 million collection is maintained in the CRL collection facility here in Chicago. At the same time, we put over 3 million digital pages and digital items on the web just in the past several years, and those have all been done collectively by CRL libraries. We also have a continuous record of support for scholarship that we should be very proud of and that we should take great satisfaction in. We've supported advanced research and teaching through the liberal lending and sharing of source materials, be they microfilms of archives or newspapers or government documents or dissertations. We've also these tend to be critical sources that are not available in most other places. We've also expanded our on-request digitization services at CRL. CRL's on-request digitization of materials in response to specific scholarly projects, to scholarly research projects, or to advanced level courses has grown exponentially over the past 3 years. So we've also, in the process of all this, managed to document, to preserve enormous amounts of documentation of major world regions and heritages. These include extensive collections on the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, extensive collections on human rights in Southeast Asia, extensive coverage of the news of the world, be they small newspapers being published in Mali and Bolivia and the other places in the developing world, or be they the ethnic press published in the United States, the ethnic newspaper, or the newspapers published by diaspora communities of Hispanic Americans, of Polish Americans, of Arab Americans, of Chinese Americans. These are collections that CRL has managed, CRL libraries have managed to preserve, and in many cases ensure the survival of, which would have disappeared in the past if CRL weren't here. Also, in CRL's seventh decade, we are it's good to reflect that we are not just a large monolithic community of 252 libraries. We're really a collection of communities. CRL is the umbrella under which a number of interest groups coalesce to pursue common ends. These interest groups include the Area Microfilm projects, devoted to preservation of materials in 6 different parts of the world: Latin America, Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Slavic and Eastern Europe. These are groups, these are specialists in the languages, histories, and culture of these regions that join together under CRL sponsorship and identify and preserve materials that are at risk and that are critical for advanced scholarly research. The area microfilms increasingly are employing digital media for the preservation of materials in addition to microfilm. The Global Resources Project also devoted most of them to major world regions or language groups that have coalesced under CRL sponsorship and focus on digitization and otherwise the providing and ensuring access to source materials, primary source materials that support research and teaching about particular world areas. These range from groups focused on Latin American resources to groups focused on French language resources and human rights documentation. The Cooperative Acquisition Program, CRL's annual acquisition of large sets, large collections or microfilm sets, is also a community within the larger CRL community. The Purchase Proposal Program involves the nomination of new collections by CRL libraries. We had 25 libraries nominating new collections this year, and for acquisition under the Global Resources or the Cooperative Acquisition Program. There were 48 collections nominated altogether. The Shared Purchase Program, which is a related program where a smaller number of libraries pool money to acquire additional collections, was also very active this year. And then the Undergraduate Research Working Group has been a group of library directors and specialists from institutions which tend to be liberal arts colleges or mid-sized universities that have identified important primary source material needed for advanced level courses, advanced level undergraduate courses. Those materials then are digitized by CRL and provided for these groups. So there are a number of these smaller communities coalescing around special interests, around particular interests that are working under the umbrella of CRL. This year, we are, and the World Newspaper Archive program, where we're digitizing, we're working with Redex to digitize newspapers, added 36 new charter participants this year who agreed to invest to support the digitization of sub-Saharan African newspapers. So, this year at CRL, the collections are growing. These include the purchase collections, which I spoke about a minute ago. The Purchase Proposal Program this year acquires a number of important collections: the Arabic manuscripts from the British Library, Church Missionary Society papers for Africa, documenting missionary activities in Africa in the late 19th or 20th century. A collection of post-war Japanese manga novels, comic graphic novels, as well as a collection of Imperial Russian illustrated literature, illustrated press, and the China Times from 1908 to 1949. All materials that support, again, advanced studies and international studies. The shared purchase program this year, which involves libraries pooling funds with CRL to acquire additional collections. This year we have participation from 18 different libraries. They are the University of Arizona, University of British Columbia, University of California, Berkeley, UCLA, Colby College, University of Colorado, Boulder, Columbia University, Cornell University, Duke University, University of Iowa, McGill University, University of Oregon, Oregon State University, University of Pennsylvania, Princeton University, Purdue University, University of Washington, and Wayne State University. All these institutions contributed to the acquisition of a number of collections, including the Comintern archives. These are the Communist Party, filed about the Communist Party of Japan, taken from the Soviet Comintern archives, readings from Islamic primary sources, and a number of and a collection of Japanese colonial documents, as well as an archive on women in the Netherlands East Indies. All these institutions contributed funds to acquire these collections in a year that is as we know, is very difficult, and a year in which funds are very scarce. So I thank all of them, and since these collections will now be available to all CRL members, we all owe them a big thanks. So, the area studies projects this year preserve materials from Liberia, Congo, Brazil, Serbia, the Philippines, and Iraq. The Liberian, there's also a collection of newspapers from Rwanda that CRL, the Cooperative Area Microfilm Project, contributed funds to enable the Library of Congress to microfilm this year. These were included newspapers, relatively recent newspapers for the last 20 years or so, from Rwanda and Liberia as well. Without the additional funding from CRL, without the support from CRL, Library of Congress would not have been able to microfilm these newspapers, which they had collected in one of their foreign offices. If they don't microfilm them, the newspapers get discarded. The paper does not come to reside in the Library of Congress. In the way of research-driven digitization on responding to requests by researchers at your institutions for loan of particular materials, we digitized about 745,000 pages of new materials. So those also get posted on the CRL servers and are available then continuously to scholars and researchers and librarians at your institution. The World Newspaper Archive, as I said, is a growing effort with ReadX. This year we started digitizing sub-Saharan African newspapers, as well as completing a collection of Latin American newspapers. Next year we expect to work on South Asian newspapers as well, so there's a growing body of material available to CRL members. American periodicals from CRL, which is a joint project with ProQuest, added another 850,000 pages this year. One of the benefits of this project, the American periodicals from CRL, is that we no longer have to send out on loan fragile popular periodicals from the U.S. from the 19th and early 20th century. These is a body of important source materials for researchers that is increasingly brittle and increasingly at risk from loss or damage by use. So now access to this is available to all CRL members electronically, either through the purchase of the product from ProQuest or by electronic interlibrary loan from CRL, which is part of your CRL membership. In addition to the digitization of these materials with ProQuest and ReadX, we're also working with ProQuest and ReadX to establish a preservation solution for the digital files as well, and that solution will have to be approved by CRL. So, aside from building collections, we are doing more to support collection investment and development at your institution. The CRL is doing this in a number of ways. we are establishing a framework for print archiving. This is a base of information and resources as part of the CRL website that will enable local and regional print archiving efforts to understand what other local and print archiving efforts are doing. This effort is being led by Liz Ann Payne, and if you're registered for the Collections Forum this afternoon, Liz Ann will give you a progress report on that. This is a matter of working with a number of other organizations in the field, including the University of California Libraries, the TRLN, the CIC, and Ithaca SNR. This is a big job. We are urgently needing to reduce the cost of redundant, extraneous physical collections. We've got to do it fairly soon. So this is a very important initiative that CRL is supporting. And we're doing that with largely with a fair amount of funding from Andrew Mellon, W. Mellon Foundation. The CRL has done a number of collection webinars during the course of the year. As Brian Schottlander mentioned, these are web conferences, web events that are designed to help collections people at your institutions, be they interlibrary loan people, reference specialists, or collection development specialists and bibliographers, to know more about CRL's holdings in these particular areas, and also about the larger world of resources in these areas. This year we had well-attended webinars on East Asia, on collections for East Asia studies, on collections for Southeast Asian studies, on electronic dissertations and theses, and on electronic news. We also convened a teleconference of about 30 CRL library collections people to discuss the dealing with vendors in the digitization of U.S. state and local newspapers. That was I think a very useful teleconference where people could speak frankly about the issues connected with dealing with vendors who want to come and digitize collections of newspapers at your institutions. The Primary Source Awards we established for the first time this year as a way to recognize the use of primary source materials, recognize not only innovative uses of primary source materials for research and teaching, but also to recognize the people that help those people find those and get to those primary source materials. So this has this has enabled us to learn a fair amount about the uses of primary source materials, particularly in areas of CRL collection interest. We are doing more, providing more in our web to support your investment in digital resources and digital services. We have this year conducted an audit of the Portico eJournals digital repository and issued a report on that, certifying Portico. This is giving you, I think this report should give you a fairly clear, detailed picture of the level of confidence that you can have in Portico, or that you should have in Portico. The idea is so this will help you, or the purpose is so this will help you make decisions about local retention of print material, of print journals that are archived in Portico, continuation of print subscriptions along with electronic subscriptions of collections that are maintained, that are held in Portico, and also whether you want to invest in Portico or not. I recommend the report, and there'll be a briefing about that this afternoon as well in the Collections Forum by Martha Brogan, who chaired our certification advisory panel as well. We're also in the process of doing an assessment of HathiTrust as a digital repository. We're looking at HathiTrust against the track criteria, the criteria that we use to judge the worthiness. The certification advisory panel has been quite impressed by the work of HathiTrust and by the development of HathiTrust to date. There are a number of areas where we're still seeking information and still trying to clarify about HathiTrust operations, but you'll get more detail about that from Martha Brogan this afternoon, and we'll be issuing a report on that probably later in the year. We think that there's tremendous potential in HathiTrust, we think there's tremendous potential for the CRL community to use HathiTrust as a way of delivering print materials that have been digitized under the mass digitization projects. to enable CRL libraries to move away from managing so much the more duplicate and often heavily redundant collection of these kinds of materials in the physical space. Again, as with our certification of Portico, the purpose is to give you a sense of how much confidence you can have in the repository to enable you to make decisions about retention of materials, maintenance and repair and replacement of materials, and where you're storing and servicing these materials. These certifications are not for purposes of making a value judgment of organizations or operations. These purposes are to provide you with actionable information for collection management. We think that the digital repositories, as well as print archiving, are the key to the proper and long-term management of legacy collections. What we're adding this year, and which you can also hear more about this afternoon, is what we're calling the Global Resources Collections Forum. We've been working, as you know, with the Charleston Advisor to provide better information about electronic resources. These are for purposes of your making decisions about acquisition of those electronic resources. We are beefing up our work. We've added to the Charleston Advisor coverage of more area studies collections and more large databases. We're going to be doing more of that. The CRL website has been entirely reconfigured to function more as a collections development, collection management support space. The Global Resources Collections Forum is our word for covering is kind of our umbrella term for covering the activities that are supporting collection development and collection management at your institution, including the things that I've mentioned that we're already doing, like the webinars, the focus newsletter, and those kinds of things. We're expanding, doing more in the way of analysis of new databases that are coming on the market that you're being asked to purchase or that you're considering purchase. And we feel that there is not enough information out there right now to have you make informed decisions about acquisition of these databases and licensing of these resources with the very limited amount of money that you have to work with these days. So I recommend that, the presentation on that this afternoon by Virginia Kerr. Our strategy going forward. Number one, what you'll see in the budget that Sarah Mahalik will propose for next year will be a couple of things. Will be really four CRL strategies for the coming year. Number one, controlling costs. We are limiting we decided we did not want to increase the factor that we use to calculate cost shares. We don't feel that we can ask for more support from the library community in a time when the library community is being cut tremendously. We have reduced our costs at CRL quite a bit. We've been keeping salaries flat. We're keeping the personnel budget flat, replacing or filling positions only when they're supported by grant funds, or only when not filling the position, a vacant position, would mean a drop in services. So we're maintaining our service strength. Number two, concentrating our resources. We're focusing on the areas that CRL is best known for. We're trying to avoid redundancy, avoid duplicating anything anyone else is doing. So those are primarily focusing in the areas of humanities and social science resources to support advanced research and teaching in those areas. Number three, the big part of it is partnerships. We feel that in a time when there's so little money around, it really is inexcusable for institutions like CRL not to work with other institutions that have common agendas, that have common interests. That there are a number of library organizations, or a number of organizations that serve libraries. We really can't afford even the limited amount of redundancy or duplication or overlap that we had before in a good economy. We can't afford even ambiguity about what we do, that even the perception that we're overlapping or that we're duplicating something that someone else is doing. So we've looked around and we've explored partnerships with a number of organizations. As you know, we've been working with REDX and with ProQuest to digitize CRL collections. These are providing platforms for delivery of CRL collections and many services that we couldn't otherwise fund fully under our own resources. We're also this year working with the British Library to digitize a collection of dissertations and theses from UK universities, mainly the large UK universities, for digital access through the Ethos program. This collection of theses is being digitized in next month and in June, and will be posted to the Ethos website. This will mean that your libraries will have access, your scholars will have access to these materials electronically without the need for us to send them to you and for you to return them. These are focusing on particular areas of CRL research interest, namely the Middle East, the Persian Gulf, Islam, those kinds of fields where we think there's intense scholarly interest. We're also working, as I said, with the Charleston Advisor to make more actionable information, provide more actionable information about electronic resources for CRL libraries, and we'll be expanding our work on that in that realm a good bit this year. We have are also working with the Law Libraries Microfilm Consortium. We've begun to work with the Law Libraries Microfilm Consortium. The Law Libraries Microfilm Consortium is another nonprofit organization they have about 250 law libraries in the U.S. and Canada primarily that do something very similar to what CRL does. They identify and digitize, and in the past they've microfilmed, but now they digitize at-risk primary source materials in the field of U.S. and international law, including government publications. We thought it would be useful for CRL and this other major North American-based consortium to work together to ensure the survival of primary documentation for advanced research. So we worked with LLMC, the Law Library Microfilm Consortium, this year to identify important materials of interest to CRL libraries for digitization and for delivery through the LLMC platform. You'll hear more about that in the months ahead. We're forming a joint steering committee to help identify and prioritize materials for digitization. But we feel that it's particularly critical at this time to work with or to leverage partnerships with other organizations, that have the same goals. We are also working with the Greater Western Library Alliance to support the TRAIL initiative, which is a digitization program that has been run for several years by Gwilla, that has digitized quite an impressive amount of government publication, primarily government technical reports. Those technical reports are being made available on the web. We are inviting CRL libraries to participate in that project this year as a new global resources program, and that you'll hear more about this afternoon as well. But we feel that it's a worthy project. It's achieving ends that CRL that we wouldn't be able to achieve on our own, and achieving it in a very sound and solid way. So we will encourage you to participate in the TRAIL program. Okay, our fourth strategy this year, we'll be drawing on reserves. Instead of increasing the cost share rate, we felt it would be we felt it necessary this year to draw on some of the reserves that we've accumulated over the past several years. We think this will be necessary for the next few years to help us through this downturn. The reserves are funds that we gathered, that we were able to accumulate during the course of years when the economy was much better. The purpose of accumulating these reserves primarily is to help us in times when funds aren't scarce. So in order to contain our costs, or in order to contain the cost of CRL for the CRL libraries, we've decided this year to draw more fully on the reserves to the tune of about $230,000. So that will be the difference between our revenues that we're projecting for the coming year and the expenditures for the coming year. Sarah Mihalik will tell you more about that. This is the pretty much the state of CRL at this time. I'd like to welcome any questions or comments that people would like to make before we get on to the discussion of the CRL proposed budget for next year.